Hey, welcome to another React.js meetup. Thanks to everyone for coming. Yeah, I won't take too long. Yeah, we have a great line of speakers for this event. But as always, any of you have any cool React side projects? Any of you have been working with Reason? Has anyone here been working with Reason at all? Yeah, well, I won't explain it. It's pretty neat. And that hence, I thought it'd be some great talk material. GraphQL, maybe a little bit more popular. Yeah, many of you have had a lot of experience with GraphQL. We always looking for GraphQL talks. So reach out to me afterwards, either here or via the Meetup app. Otherwise, yeah, thank you very much to Axon for hosting us. And what does Axon do? I guess I'll pass that over to Brian, and he can kind of give you a lowdown.
All right, thanks guys for coming out. I'm Brian. I'm Vice President of Software Engineering here at Axon. Super excited to have you guys out here tonight. Before the meetup, who here has actually even heard of Axon before? Just kind of gauging. All right, so roughly half the people. And then, actually, you guys let all the employees. You don't count. Actually, real quick, let's have employees raise your hands. Okay, so if you want to go talk to folks afterwards about more details about what we're doing, that's for the crew. We've got folks from design, front-end development, back-end development, embedded stuff, so kind of all across the board. So just wanted to take a couple minutes and talk about what we're doing. So as a company, Axon started in the late 90s as a company called Taser, which everyone's probably heard of before. The company was really born out of a tragedy that our company founder had, where he had some buddies that were shot and killed in a road rage incident. He's like, this is tragic. Like, we need to have a better way in those terrible times in life where force needs to be exercised. How do we do it non-lethally? So they invented the Taser. And that's been a great success for the company. A few years back, we expanded our mission, which was protect life, into protect life and protect truth. And so we got into the body camera business. And that's actually been a remarkable product. It's one that I get super excited about, really for one main reason, which is it's very unusual to have a product where all parties impacted by the product are impacted positively. So what I mean by that is, you think about something like a display ad on the internet. I, as a company running that display ad, it's great for me. I, as a consumer, usually seeing that display ad, it's generally not great for me, right? So there's this asymmetry and value being created. What we found with our body cameras is those cameras have an normative effect on the behavior of those sides of that interaction. So I'm a cop, and out on the streets, I'm behaving better when I know I'm being recorded. It turns out the community members also behave better when they know that they're being recorded. So that's been pretty powerful. Of course, as soon as you have body cameras, you then have a tremendous digital file management problem. So if you're an agency like LAPD, you've got 7,000 officers, which means you may be generating 50,000 hours of video a day. Most of that video is super boring. Most of it's like people getting in and out of their cars. A very small percentage of which is super impactful, life or death. Could put someone in jail, could have someone get fired from their job. And so we take that stuff very seriously and been building some really awesome kind of AI-powered workflows on that to really help manage that stuff. And then, in addition, we've got a couple of greenfield products, particularly on there are a couple of products in law enforcement called RMS and CAD. CAD, for example, is what we call 911. It's all those systems that run on a dispatch center and an officer's car. The unfortunate thing about the state of the world of CAD is a lot of these systems were built 30 years ago. So I'm now terrified that if I ever need to call 911, will help actually come in time, kind of based on the really kind of poor technology that these people have to deal with. So as you can imagine, as a company, we're exclusively focused on high-tech stuff. We have user experiences running in React kind of on all sorts of really cool stuff. We have stuff in the browser. We have stuff in officers' cars, with React Native. We have stuff that's running, as we get into CAD, it will be running in dispatch centers with 6 monitors and all sorts of crazy stuff. So actually a pretty exciting place to be for folks that are interested in building really elegant user experiences. And I guess that's probably time for my obligatory plug. You probably walked in, you saw the space that we have here. We actually have the entire 14th floor. There's about 125 people in this office. We need to hire about 70 more people this year, most of which are software developers. So we're definitely hiring. We've got an awesome mission to protect life and protect truth. developers here have a big impact because we're still a relatively small company. We've got a lot of kind of early stage products, and then the people that we tend to attract are also people that are similarly interested in our mission. So tonight, you'll be hearing from two of these people, kind of with some of our experiences with React, and so I'll hand it over to Oscar.
Cool. Awesome. Okay. So my name is Oscar. I'm a front-end dev here at Axon. And I'm going to be talking about Reflex. It's a grid and layout system that I've been working on with Andrew and Steven, also here from Axon. But before we get started, can I get a show of hands? How many of you are familiar with what a grid system is? Okay, most of you. How many of you do you use one, either at work or for side projects? Okay, a decent number. So very quickly, let's talk about what a grid system is. Then I'll talk about why I think you should use one, and then we'll get more into the Reflex in particular. So a grid system for web development allows you to position elements in the page, allows you to stack them and to size them in a way that aligns perfectly, that respects spacing. So the goals of a grid system are to have this pixel-perfect layout, and at the same time make sure that the positioning is easy, so that we can achieve a perfect layout very simply. And then we want to upload all the testing to that framework. So we don't want to have to worry about if what we're positioning on these browsers is going to look the same way on other browsers. And ultimately, we want to reduce, or if we can completely eliminate, the amount of CSS that we need to write for layout. And the reason for that is because you can start using Sass mixins or CSS in JS, or you can get as fancy as you want, but CSS doesn't scale. And so the only way in which you can have a maintainable CSS code base is by having very little CSS. So with this, if we are using a grid system, we're able to just grab all the positioning CSS that we will write and upload it to a framework. Now, there are tons of different grid systems. Probably the most popular one is Bootstrap. Angular Material has some sort of grid system as well. There are many others, Bulma, Materialize, Skeleton. But basically, they fall within two categories. Either they are just CSS classes that you apply, and so they are framework agnostic, or they are just a thin JavaScript wrapper on top of those CSS classes. So ultimately, it's not like you are doing the layout in JavaScript. You're still relying on CSS, but because you have that thin wrapper in JavaScript, you're able to have an extra API, and you don't need to either overload the CSS with making very complicated classes, because you would want to use as few as possible, and at the same time, you're still exposing a nice API. So in that sense, Reflex falls in that later category, which it's a JavaScript-based one, that's a React-based one. But before we get into that, I wanted to show a couple examples on how we would implement the layout we were seeing on different frameworks. So this could be one way to do it in Bootstrap. So we have a container class that will have everything, and then we can define row classes for each row. Now, Bootstrap is a 12-column layout system. That means that it's divided in 12 columns. And so to size things, so if we want the elements on the page, we would have them to be sized 4 columns each. So in this case, 3, 8, 12. And these are the classes that we're seeing here. Then to indicate the next line, we have this class as a breakpoint, and then we size the other elements. Another CSS grid would be Bulma. That's fairly popular as well. We see that it's a bit more terse. And here we just add it's multi-line class, and things automatically flow. And then I wanted to show the Angular Material one. It's not really a grid system because it's more of a wrapper on top of Flexbox. So here, by defining the flex attribute, what we're seeing is that the space is divided evenly. And if we want to specify the size, we specify in percentages. But the reason I include it here is just to show how here we're only dealing with layout and flex instead of dealing with a bunch of different CSS classes. So we're able to simplify the API use. This is how you do it in Reflex. So we have a single element, which is the grid. It's infinitely nestable, so you can use it for the parent and the container, and you just indicate the size of the element. Now, yes, the API is a bit more terse, but why would you use Reflex, particularly when there are so many other options out there? Because to me, when I was starting to think about Reflex, like this was the first thought that came to my mind, right? It's like, why would you do yet another one? And so I think the main reason for that is flexibility. So CSS grid systems work great, but most of them are very difficult to tweak. So you're going to be able to, for instance, set you can set or unset the separation between elements, but you're not able to tweak it much. You're not able to say like, oh, I don't want a margin here on the left side, or I want to add double separation on this other space. So this is something that we built into Reflex and made it very easy to set this styling. With that comes increased consistency. So because you're not doing this directly on CSS, there is a single good way to do it within the system. So you're not writing the CSS, and you're basically using this more flexible API. Another key distinction is that we have a grid system that works very similar to the other ones that we were seeing, but we also include what we call a layout system. So the grid system is responsible for horizontal positioning of things, like different elements one after the other in multiple rows. But there's another common set of CSS positioning problems that we want to solve. So for instance, when you're creating a page, you want to set the header to be fixed at the top, or you want a body to have a minimum height of 100% and to overflow the content when it exceeds it. You want to be able to put the footer below that, and those are very common patterns. So we wanted to upload all that to the layout system, so we didn't have to write it every time. So it's something that is built into Reflex, and so then that's why we have this. We try to keep the API as simple as possible, and ultimately, because we have this increased flexibility, it also means that it's easy to make the wrong layout or things that won't align perfectly, right? So we built a dev mode that it shows you exactly where the boundaries of each box are. All this code gets removed if you run it on production mode, but on developer mode, you're able to see the bounding boxes of things when you turn it on, so that you are able to easily create those pixel-perfect layouts. So to jump into example here, we're seeing this 8-column card, and it looks fairly normal, right? So we would define like this container, background white, some box shadow, and then we see two pieces here, the title and the content, and we see that the separation in between the content, the actual content, and the outside of the card is also matches this $1 size. So all these we would be able to do very easily with any of the CSS framework that we've seen. The problem is when you get the next comp, and it looks like this. Because here with something like Bootstrap, we would say, okay, we define a two columns here, and then everything else is contained here. But the problem is that to position these maps, we're going to need some custom CSS. And it's not complicated to write. It's still simple CSS, and it's not that much CSS. But the problem is that you need to write it often. And so once you start accumulating lots of these little bits of CSS, is when you start losing the benefit of actually using a grid system. Because now you need to be testing this layout because you're not only just using the grid system, you're also using your custom changes to it. So I wanted to show you a quick demo of different things we've been doing with Reflex. Okay, and so here are a couple examples of some more cards. Let's see if I can zoom in. So we have a couple more card examples here that we see, and like all this is written without any custom CSS. But I think where it gets more interesting is when we're actually looking at pages. And so this is an example of our search page. It's not with this color scheme on the product. But this this is showing the depth mode, right? How it's defining all these boxes in different colors so that you can very easily see where things align with the grid. And so we can see how we have like half a gutter here and another half, and they combine, they add up to a full gutter of separation. But internally, we're able to implement it this way, and all these we're able to write without any CSS. So if we, just to show the depth mode, so for the real product, obviously we would have different background colors, but this is what depth mode does. It adds these backgrounds so that we can easily distinguish where things are starting there. Maybe we can look at a less big example like this one. So the CSS, well, not the CSS, the JSX for this page is actually fairly terse. So this is the entire, how we implement the entire page. There's no custom CSS. We see a couple, it's hard to see. We see a couple custom elements here like box or root, but those are nothing else than wrappers that we define that set different default values to the grid. Ultimately, it's all either a grid or a layout component. And I guess the main question is like, is it ready? Can we start using this? No, but almost. So where we are at right now, the API is stable. We've been adding more features to it, but we haven't been introducing any breaking changes. So far, it's been accommodating all the layout needs that we've had. We are starting to use it in more projects, and I'm sure that as soon as we add it more broadly, we're gonna start needing to add more stuff to it. But again, like I don't anticipate any breaking changes. But the main reason why I think that this is not ready is because we still need some solid cross-browser testing. Now, we have really solid unit test coverage where we're like 99.5% coverage. We have snapshot tests. We have image comparison tests. But those are only running right now on Chrome. And for Reflex to be really production ready, we're going to target supporting IE 11+, Firefox, Chrome, Edge, all the modern browsers. So once that step is in place, then I think Reflex will be ready to go. We're working on it, and so it should be ready soon. So if so 1 second. So if you're interested in the project, we have a wiki that we've been adding a bunch of articles there. Definitely check it out. We also have like I added a couple links to different grid systems information in general. So if you're interested on the topic, check it out. The link to the slides is up here, but I'll also post it on the meetup page. And this is all I had. Thank you. Do you guys have any questions?
The last slide.
Sorry, what?
The last slide.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, 2 questions. One, are you able to utilize some of the new CSS grid features as far as multi-row columns? And secondarily, does it inject inline CSS? Does it use like class names? And is it reactive as far as different page sizes for different devices?
Okay. So it's Flexbox based. We initially tried it with CSS grids, just because it was the new cool hotness. But the browser support wasn't good enough. And also my experience with CSS grids is that they are great for custom layouts. But for designing a system that you're going to be able to use to define different sets of columns, it works much better to use Flexbox. Then you were also asking about responsive. So Reflex is not responsive, and that's on purpose. So systems like Bootstrap will say, okay, after this size, we change the layout, and instead of being in columns, now it's like stacked vertically one after the other. Now this works well for static sites, but for single page apps, if you're switching from the desktop view to the mobile view, there's a lot more changes that you're going to need to the layout that you cannot accommodate in any automated way. So the way we are planning on tackling this is, actually, I don't have a link here, but there are a couple projects that basically allow you to specify media queries with React components. And so the idea is that we would say, okay, if this React component that is just like looking for the right media query to saying at X size show this, and then at other size show something else. So basically, because we would have the entire style guide as already individual components, all we would have would be like, if mobile layout, then it's this layout. If not, these other things. Reflex itself is responsive in the sense that like it will adjust to the screen size, but it's not responsive in the sense of media queries. And you had another question, right?
I was just curious if you were using class names or injecting CSS straight into the code.
It's with very few exceptions, it's mostly just class names. Oh, any other question?
So I noticed that you actually have a custom like grade component, but is there any chance that you'll be offering support for other frameworks like Vue or whatever, by just having like a CSS style sheet? Or, like kind of like Bootstrap, like they do like whatever, like column, medium, or
Right.
whatever.
Yeah, so right now we're using CSS modules. So all the class names end up with like really weird prefixes. It would be very easy to change that. Because right now we're only using internally and we haven't had much of a need for that use case, we haven't done it. But if it's something that if people say like, oh, we would really like that feature, we could definitely add it. Cool. And I think we're good.
Thanks so much. Yeah, if you guys want to get refill, some more food, we'll probably do like an AV setup for the next couple of minutes. So bathroom break if you want. Be back in, yeah, it's going to take that long.
I don't know if you'll be able to hear me from the back. Pretty quiet here, but yeah.
Give everyone 30 second heads up. We're going to start in a bit. Grab a seat. All right, we're going to kick this off. I'm going to grab your seat. Next speaker, talking about accessibility in React. All right. I guess Andy, kick off your talk.
Hello, everyone. Wow. So Oscar, I think, might have been the best React developer here at Axon. So I am like the maybe 10th best, middling. But I do know a lot about accessibility. And so this talk is going to be a lot about accessibility and a little bit about React. So I am Andy Ernst. I'm a software engineer at Axon. And I built actually Axon.com. The marketing website is like 90% my code. And so all of the examples will be there. And you can find the slide deck at axon.com/reactalley. Since I built the website, I can put up links on it all the time. So the goal of this talk is a few basic things about what is accessibility, what it is, who benefits from having an accessible website, why it matters, like why even go through the effort to do this. You're not a jerk for asking that question. How to fix these accessibility problems, where to learn more, that's very important. There's a lot to learn here. And specifically, I'm just going to cover the basics. There's a lot here, but this can benefit a lot by the 80-20 rule, where you put in 20% of the effort and get 80% of the results. Am I not caught up there? That is weird. Why am I out of sync? Oh, internet. I need you. Okay. Yeah, the 80-20 rule. So, what is accessibility? It is allowing people to see and use your website. That means all people as much as possible to get the best possible experience when using your website. Try to make it inclusive for everyone. You can't always do everything. It doesn't make sense to have a drawing app work with a screen reader. It doesn't really work well with the keyboard as it well as with the mouse, but try your best. Oh, and thing to note, accessibility is called ALLY for short. A11Y, because there's 11 letters between the A and the Y, and spelling is hard. Just real quick, who knows that their app is accessible? Everyone just, you have total confidence? You get, okay, everyone raising your hand, you get a pass. You can leave if you want. Taking cookies on the way out. Everyone else, you're in the right spot. There's a lot of stuff here. But as I said, just covering the stuff you need to know. So who are we talking about when I say accessibility? Well, that's at least 15 million users in the U.S., more internationally, of course. So roughly, we're talking about 6% of all people in the U.S. have some kind of cognitive impairment that makes it more difficult to use a website. 4% have trouble seeing color. 2% have little or no vision, and probably more have some difficulty seeing. 2% are hard of hearing, and about 8% have some kind of motor disability. That's where that's from. But don't blame me if those numbers are wrong. So why improve accessibility? Well, for one thing, more users. You get more users to your wonderful website, you sell more widgets or whatever you sell. I used to work at Expedia, and at Expedia, we paid a lot of attention to accessibility because it was the right thing to do. Actually, it's because we were getting sued. But that's another good point. You don't want to get sued, whether it's by the government or an advocacy group. Eventually, if you get big enough, then they start caring about it. Like, you need to make this website accessible to everyone. Make it so everyone can see your great stuff. So yeah, we spent a lot of time at that accessibility. We tested everything with multiple screen readers. We had an employee who was totally blind, so he was a wizard with screen readers, would absolutely understand, could work his way through any app. Other reasons, it is the right thing to do. You want to make the web accessible, want to make it available for everyone. And it's also easier to do earlier on. Just like building a responsive app, you don't want to wait until the very end to try to do that. You're constantly resizing your browser window. I'm doing this all day on my browser window because throwing that stuff in the end is difficult. And this should be part of your best practices as well, making something accessible from the get-go. And in the end, it actually creates a better experience for everyone, even users who don't have any kind of motor or visual impairment. This is better for them. How, you ask? I'm glad you asked. You'll find out. So first of all, let us meet some of the difficulties we'll be talking about today. User difficulties like a user who is dyslexic, or someone who has low vision or is colorblind, someone who is hearing impaired or motor impaired, or is completely non-sighted. I'm going to go through a few do's and don'ts when building a website, any website at all, but a few bits specifically for React. Love this poster. It's a very accessible way to understand this information. I have a link for them in the end. So for our first user, imagine a Sarah who has dyslexia. And she has difficulty with reading, just reading normal things. If you can see this, this is sort of what it's like. I have dyslexia. Words jumping around. You can piece through it. It's just difficult. And you can check this out at that website. It's kind of fun to try to read through it. Fun for a short while. But how can you make this, make websites better for them? Well, really long lines are difficult. When you get to the very end of a long line that's 80 words long, and then you have to skip all the way to the next one, it's easy to lose context. And so limiting line width. Also, larger text is easier to read. Some fonts are also easier to read. Strangely, Comic Sans is very easy for people with dyslexia to read, but don't ever use that. It's terrible. So for text size, a 14 pixel minimum or a standard 1M. 1M at the top level means 16 pixels. And if you use M's all throughout, then if someone comes in with a font setting of 150%, that will all enlarge. That is something we're not doing on the website right now. If you come in with 150% text size, it just looks normal. Command plus works, but just not that. So I need to fix that. Another good thing, call-outs of important information and using straightforward language. This helps lots of people, but if you have trouble reading, this is a big help. Also, spelling tolerance. If you're typing in something to a search, you want to get search suggestions. Don't make it so people spell perfectly. And this should be obvious at this point, but who does this also help? Well, it helps you if you're distracted when you're going through the website, or if you're just trying to skim. Call-outs of important information, very useful in that situation. Or what if the website's not in your native language? Then it's particularly useful to get the core points, not to have overly idiomatic language. And overall, this is just good design. You'll find a lot of these just boil down to how to build a good website. So all these principles will sort of be going towards that. What is good UX? What is building a good website? For our next user, we have Alan. Alan has low vision and is also colorblind. There's lots of kinds of colorblindness. Complete colorblindness is rare, but in general, it's good to be sort of thinking in terms of complete colorblindness. I'll show you some tools to check out different ways of testing with that. So he has difficulty with both small fonts and anything that uses colors. Colors to distinguish things. Here's a little image of how something someone's seen could look very different to people with different kinds of color blindness. So some fixes for this are, again, avoiding really small fonts, allow zooming on your website. I don't know how many of you have seen this before, this in your meta tag. We used to have this on the website. We didn't want pinch and zooming didn't work, but if you do this, That's a big FU to a lot of people. Shame. Not okay. So, when possible, use multiple cues, not just color. Use color along with something else. You can also test with AX. AX stands for is a lot of acronyms. Accessibility Extension, I believe. And so I'm going to pop over and try to test this on 2 screens while holding the microphone. This is like juggling. Oh yeah, open up from the screen. That's great. So this is completely unable to see it. Okay, so I've installed this Chrome extension, and I installed oh, here it is. So this works independent of React. This is not any website. You can use the Axe tool, analyze, and it will pull out some useful things here that it thinks is going wrong on your website. I've got a few violations. Oh man, don't have sufficient color contrast. So I actually know what's going on here. There's a bunch of different things. A lot of them are that it actually can't detect if this has enough contrast because it's got a background image. I happen to know that this is black, this is white, this is okay. You can mark this as okay and go on. We can highlight it for one thing. Let's talk about this guy in this case. But you can mark it okay and keep checking out different stuff. It's a good thing just for a sanity check to make sure everything's going okay. Oh yeah, I want to go back to my presentation. Okay. Yes. Okay. So another quick thing I just learned yesterday is your phone has a whole bunch of different filters when you're taking photos. You're trying to Snapchat someone or whatever. If you can just take that and point it at a screen, you can see your screen in like 8, 9 different color variations. That could be a good sanity check to see if anything looks really weird to someone else. But the Axe tool is sort of the de facto one. Oh, there was a story I have of someone who was a game tester, and he was testing out this game, and there was this color-based puzzle. He just was not getting it. He didn't understand it. And I found out these colors just don't work with his form of color blindness. So they changed it. They changed the colors. And then another tester said, I don't get this puzzle anymore. It made sense yesterday, but what is going on? So they changed it to shapes. And so now it's got shapes and colors, just so, try to avoid that whole issue as much as possible. So doing these fixes also helps for people, say, who are looking at a screen but they forgot their glasses, or maybe they're viewing with glare on the screen. That happens to me a lot. Having colors that are like a subtle gray on a white is really difficult to see if you've got glare on the screen. Or if you've got an old monitor that doesn't display colors well. So that's that for color blindness. And onto Liz. So Liz is someone who cannot hear well. Obviously has difficulty with any audio, but in particular unclear audio or audio from multiple sources, or maybe noisy background noise. Noisy background noise. So some fixes for this are, here's something I didn't think about. If you have contact information on your website, make sure it's not just a phone number. If someone has trouble hearing, an email would be a lot easier for them, or maybe a text message. Avoid any audio-only cues that they're doing something wrong or doing something right. Have a visual along with it as well. On videos, add captioning or some kind of transcript. On video, it often helps to have a volume adjust or speed adjust. I usually use this to watch videos faster, but if I were learning another language, slowing it down would help. I assume no one does this, but do you have any autoplay videos on your website? You do. Shame. So, as I mentioned, this helps when maybe you're in a noisy environment, or you're looking at something in your non-native language. Having a transcript would really help. Next, on to Julie, who is someone who has a motor impairment, cannot use a mouse, but can use a keyboard. And so she has difficulty with bad websites, which I mean to say poorly structured websites, and also single-page applications, because a lot of times they're doing things a little differently. And so if you've never tabbed through a website before, I want to show you what that looks like. So I think I did a decent job with this guy. So as you can see, I can tab through here. We didn't like the default outline color, so we did something a little different. It is just color. So maybe I should do something more there, but at least it's a fairly high contrast color. As you can tab through here, you see I can get to all the same things that I could anyways. Also, if I were to try to activate this, I can do it with space. I'm not using the mouse at all now. Now that this is open, I can tab right into here. I couldn't tab into it before, only by opening up through this. So this is actually the DOM order. It goes this guy, these guys, then those guys. So I don't have to mess with tab order at all. I'm just telling them the browser to make it tabbable or not tabbable as I toggle this. And if you go to a lot of pages just with a keyboard, you find really quickly that you want to skip these nav links. I don't have too many of them, but on some websites there's a ton. So here you see I've activated a skip to, what are they right there? Skip to main content. So I can skip the nav, I can hit that and go right down and start tabbing through this stuff. If you do a lot of tab navigation, you start to really like this. And as you can see, it doesn't show up for most users. It only shows up when you're tabbing. Or how do I go backwards? Yeah, Shift Tab allows you to go backwards. Yeah. Oh, I don't really want to see the weather today. So some fixes for this are just do keyboard testing, and I'll tell you a little bit about how to help with making things tabbable, good flow. So definitely test with the keyboard. Just don't touch the mouse. See if you can get around your website. Implement some kind of keyboard clicking. I just have a global listener that listens for space and return and enters them as a click. And that solved a lot of problems. Now I can click on links, even if I re-implement them in React as something weird, it all just counts as a click. Using proper HTML is very useful. If you were to re-implement a button, then it wouldn't get keyboard focus unless you do something special. But if you use a button, it already gets keyboard focus. I am now hitting tab instead of space. Too much in my mindset. On mobile, large touch targets are useful. If someone is movement impaired, large touch targets are a big help. And one little word of caution, when doing tab stuff, watch out for modals. You should not be able to escape a modal with tab except by dismissing it or accepting it. This is a really common mistake, that you can just tab right out of a modal and get the content behind it, and then you're kind of lost, not sure where you are. I think any good like React modal out there probably takes care of this. So some things to avoid are tab index of greater than 0. You just see a lot of tab index that are quite large. You see tab index of like 1, 2, 5. Oh no, 3. Here we are. It's so difficult to keep track. So just don't mess with that at all. The only tab indexes, well, first of all, native HTML is great. Links, buttons, any other kind of input, they're all tabbable. But if you have to tell the browser something else, these are the only 2 tab indexes you should ever use. 0 makes something that's not normally tabbable, tabbable. -1 makes something that's normally tabbable, not tabbable. So 0 can only be focusable with hitting tab, and -1 can only be focused via GS. It's kind of useful when you have something that normally can't take focus, but you want to force focus there. You can do a -1. I just have a helper one that just focuses and gives it a -1 if it doesn't have a 0 or doesn't focus normally. So some things to avoid here. Who has this in their code? I think you know what's coming up. Overriding that line? Shame. That's not good at all. No. This is in a lot of people's codes. Instead, try not doing that. That's a good one. Or if you do override it, give it something different. Like if it doesn't have a border, You could give it a border when it has focus, and give it a different kind of border, a thicker border, something like that. I use that a little bit. The only thing to note here is if you don't overwrite it, then it will show the outline when you tab, but not when you click, which is kind of good, because if you're clicking, you're already kind of figuring it out. However, if you overwrite it, then you get it when you click too, so it kind of makes it uglier looking. It's better just to stay with the native HTML. Still better than having nothing, but, you know, that's something I kind of found out the hard way. Sticking with HTML, native HTML is something you're going to hear a lot in this talk. So doing these changes also helps when, say, you're on the bus with a phone. Big touch targets, that's really helpful. I encounter that almost every day. Also, if you're holding something like this stock footage guy is holding a baby. Yeah, and an iron. That's what that is. I didn't see what that was when look at him. He's a busy guy. And so he might be using tab more. He might be having trouble using the internet if you don't make some adaptations for that. And also any kind of web form. I'm sure you've seen lots of bad websites with forms that are just annoying. You can't click the labels and they go to the inputs. You can't tab through them easily. Like, this helps everyone, just using good HTML for all this. Okay, let's go to our next and final user, who's kind of the trickiest case. Brian, who cannot see at all. He has difficulty with, well, viewing images, of course, but poor HTML structure, any kind of bad user flow, but in particular, single-page applications, because they do weird stuff. So there's some tools built for this, for navigating the computer and websites. Like on Windows, there's JAWS. On Android, there's TalkBack. On OS X and iOS, there's VoiceOver. And so for this, since I'm on a Mac, I'm going to show you a little bit about VoiceOver. You need to know a little bit how to use this. This is just going to cover the desktop. It works a little bit different on the iPhone. But let's take a look at it. And this might be hard to hear. But you can activate this on your computer anytime by hitting Command F5. Oh yeah, just show that on my screen instead of the other screen. Great, just keep the audio here. Love it. Let's see if I can't fix that. Oh, maybe? No, not getting it. I'll just put them. Oh, is it just mute? I can just hold the microphone up here. I think I'll just hold it up to my laptop. So what it is, it has a special mode here that allows. It's going to get so annoying. It's very good for navigating the website. It allows you not just to see the links as tabbing through would, but allows you to see all of the content, and it gives you extra information about it. So if I can just put the mic right here and tab through this little bit. Why don't I just narrate this? It's going to work better. So what it's saying is, it's saying what the different content is. Oh,
Can you put it on microphone?
I put it what?
Microphone.
Yeah, actually, could someone else hold this for me?
Sure.
I nominate you. So this holds the speaker right there.
Missed link. Please report any issues or feedback here. Main products and accessories. The product and accessories gallery is currently in beta. Looking for a specific product or accessory? Browse our devices and software and start insert and link. Visit link. Return to home page.
Can you all hear that decently well? Oh, great. Okay.
Space.
So I'm heading these two voiceover commands. I will need your help a little bit. So there's two voiceover keys here that are start off as control and option. So you hold those down and you hit the right arrow to continue forward, left arrow to go back, and the voiceover keys and space to activate anything. With that, you can go through the entire website. You may see that we here that we have a little bit different content for the screen reader than we do for just visual people. If I go back to this logo,
Visit link. Return to home page.
it says return to home page.
To click this link, press Control Option Space.
So it gives a little bit of extra information there. Stuff that's hidden to the average person, but it's vital to the user, because that symbol doesn't mean anything necessarily to the screen reader. And what else is useful? There's also tricks like
Headings menu.
I can go to the menu of all of the headings on the page,
Links menu.
or all of the links on the page,
Without stops and landmarks menu.
all the landmarks on the page. And I'm seeing a little bit of a visual here. I'm seeing a visual here of all of these different ones. But the people who actually use screen readers all the time get really good at this. I can give you a closer demo afterwards. I'm kind of annoyed that didn't work the way I expected it to. Was there a question?
Yeah, I was wondering if this is a library that you created to the OS as well.
Ah, good question. I didn't cover that. This is native to OS X. VoiceOver comes free, and that is great because JAWS on Windows costs $900.
Jesus.
Yeah, more for a professional license. Yeah. Anyway, this works pretty well. Its best browser is Safari. It works reasonably well in Chrome as well. I recommend doing a little tutorial. It's built in. If you go to accessibility under system preference, there's VoiceOver and there's a little tutorial you can go through there. But just so you know, there's like, if you can somehow navigate it and go through it, then you know that your website will work with a screen reader. But if you get someone who uses these every day, they'll have fantastic tricks for them. They'll set the voice up to 200% speed to get through that website super fast. Yeah, it is crazy. Oh, I need to go back to the presentation. Okay, so some fixes you can do here. I wish I could demonstrate it a little better, but having good HTML hierarchy is very important, because when I pulled up the menu, all the different headings, it showed that H1, H2, H3, and so if I have those as descriptive text as actually correct, then I can hop to different spots on the page really quickly. And if I use proper HTML elements, then I can see I'm in a nav, I'm in a list. If you have meaningful link names, you can hop to that link. I remember there was a link about accessories. I wonder where it is on the page. Alt text on images is very important. I have some images on the home page right now that are like 95167. It's not meaningful to anyone. It's a string of 10 numbers in a row. And beyond this, adding ARIA role, ARIA attributes, and visually hidden. So these may be new terms to you. You're all like, ARIA, what is that? Okay. Well, there's a lot of ARIA and roles and attributes. So ARIA stands for Accessible Rich Internet Application. It's a standard. It supplements HTML and helps make things work better for screen readers. So here's a big old table of ARIA roles, a big bunch of ARIA attributes, and this can get really confusing because you got like ARIA label, you got ARIA hidden, you got ARIA live, you got ARIA start, you got Ariana Grande. There's a lot of ARIA stuff. So here's some of the ARIA's best hits. One is role. Every time you change something to do something else, like change a div to be a button, you should use role equals button. If I'm making a div be a list item, make it list item. You get a nice hint with a screen reader, item 1 of 10 or whatever, and you can hop out of the list really easily. ARIA label is one I find used a lot. That search magnifying glass in the upper right corner doesn't really make sense to have a visual label there. So just on the input, I have label equals search. So that when you get in there, you know it's search. ARIA hidden equals true, sometimes useful to hide content from screen readers. They will not read this content at all. It's useful when content is hidden behind things, like that little pop-down menu that I have has ARIA hidden when it's not displayed. And also ARIA live. This is the sort of navy of ARIA. It makes things speak to the screen reader. So if you have an update and you put it into a DOM element that has this attribute on it, it will read that to the screen reader in most screen readers. Assertive means it interrupts people, and default means it'll wait till they're done with something. That's occasionally used when you've got something really important or like new content loaded or there's an error. So if you're new to visually hidden, I mentioned it briefly earlier, this is if you want to show something only to a screen reader. It's a CSS thingy. I call it visually hidden because that's what they call it at Expedia, and I just stole their CSS. No, actually, you can find this online. It's the same CSS. You look it up anywhere. You look up visually hidden. It'll be exactly this CSS. It makes something effectively invisible, but the screen reader still sees it. If you make it display none, the screen reader will skip it, as it should. So a little more about ARIA. There's this quote of Homer Simpson, to ARIA, the cause of and solution to all our accessibility problems. It is a help, but native HTML is the best at this. Building a screen reader is hard. It has to work with everything. And so it works with good HTML. You just have to write the good HTML first. So HTML is better than using role. And role is better than using ARIA attributes. Usually you use both, but in order of preference. ARIA attributes, I have found, are always better than using visually hidden hints to the user. But when it comes down to it, you should test it with a screen reader. I've had things where I used the right ARIA, I thought I used the right ARIA attributes over everything, the right role for everything, and then I went through the screen reader and it was a mess. It was really hard to navigate. And then so I did some research, found out I was totally wrong about that ARIA. Just so you know, if I was trying to re-implement a checkbox, this is the minimum I'd have to write. If I have a span, I need to give a role checkbox, I need to do ARIA checked, I need to make sure this stays updated, I need to give it a tab index of 0 so that it's tabbable, and then I need to put effectively the label inside of it. Whereas if I just use checkbox, that all would be automatic. Oh, what did I hit? Oh yeah, semantic HTML is always the best. So making these changes helps everyone because better HTML. Who else does it help? I think it helps probably crawlers. If you've got stuff that a screen reader can understand, probably a crawler will understand it better too and be better at serving your app. And so screen readers is a difficult case to support. It takes a little more effort, but I recommend at least going through your app to make sure you're doing the minimum in order to get it to work with a screen reader. If you can navigate through your app in a reasonable amount of time, you're doing a pretty good job. Probably someone who uses a screen reader all the time can go through it even better. So now you're all wondering, what specifically about React? Well, I have 3 little mini React apps on Axon.com, and I've been doing the accessibility inside of them. There's a question in the back?
Yeah, you said semantic HTML. I'm sorry, explain to me what that is.
Okay. Semantic HTML is using the right thing for the job. If you have navigation, use a nav. If you have a footer, use a footer. Don't use classes, use stuff that is sort of the language of the web. HTML5 introduced a lot of that kind of stuff. Good question. So accessibility in React. One thing that's easy is you can keep everything in sync. You just put your state, you got your ARIA checked equals true or false. You can handle that really easily in React. You just got to remember to do it. One thing to note is that ARIA uses dashes, unlike the camel case that's used everywhere else in React. Not entirely sure why. I think it's because they were too lazy to add that in. But here's an example from my code. So you can see the role is normal. I've got a class name there, and ARIA owns, which means it's a child of this thing, even though it's not a child of HTML. So that's a little example there. And one thing I found that was useful was having an escape hatch for focus management, because it was really annoying to pass refs around everywhere. I opened a little dialog thing, and I need to pass a ref somewhere so that the parent can call the child of this thing, and like when it closes, return focus back up to that guy. I found it a little difficult, and if I may make a confession, just a little jQuery. I expected that. I think it's important if what the user thinks in the end. Hopefully they'll forgive me. So some other things, when you're using React, don't duck punch. This may be the first time you've heard this term. That means you re-implement something that already exists or maybe doesn't exist yet. Just like duck typing, don't recreate something that already exists. And I just wanted to use the word duck punch. When you do something new, like something beyond what HTML can do, use tested components. This guy has made 4 really good components. One's a modal, a few other ones that work really well in React and are super accessible. You can see how he did it there, and hopefully learn something. There's React Axe. So this is something specifically for React. Let's see. This is going to be a real quick demo. This is something that you hook in on the JavaScript layer, and it just prints out stuff that it sees is weird. I left a console log in there. And so here's got a bunch of serious stuff. Some of these I think are probably false positives, but that contrast is definitely not enough right there. I need to bump that up. And it even has some helpful things, like it has, at least it used to, up here, has rules where you can learn a whole bunch more about this, how to be more compliant with it, and you can hook this into your pipeline for testing. This is something only runs in dev and test environments, but it will check your React components and your not React components. Just whenever it sees something that's not meeting standards, it just prints out something right there on the console. So that's super handy. Just got that working today. So here's some things that I want you to always do going forward. When you're building an app, think of your users. Not just one user, but different users that may have different difficulties in using your website. The 5 that I mentioned today are pretty good points to think of. There's a lot of other different kinds of impairments out there, but those are some of the main ones. Test with the Axe extension or the React Axe one. That's a little nicer because it's automated. Test with the keyboard. Occasionally, test with the screen reader, especially if you're building a component that's used in lots of places. That's going to be really important. And I want to share with you one website that I think is the perfectly accessible website. I built it just today. Oh, yeah. The really special thing about this is there's no CSS, no JavaScript, so it works just great. Look at this. I can tab through things. It only tabs to one of the radio buttons before it goes to the checkboxes, which means that's intentional, actually. That's how it's supposed to work. I tab to one of them, and then I can move it around with the arrows just like this. So trying to re-implement this is tricky, right? Doing all this, I have to worry about all that stuff. It's much easier just to use the native components. Yeah, that's a beautiful website right there. Who needs CSS? Okay, so here's a recap. There's a thing called POUR. It is an acronym. It's kind of a poor acronym, but whatever it works. It's something is needs to be perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust. Robust means it works with a variety of tools. And if you can do that on your website, just keep that in mind, then you're winning. I think you've built a good website. And I think this is probably what winning looks like. Yeah. That's what winning looks like. Definitely. Pretty confident about this image. So here's some great resources. Here's one I found particularly useful. This Udacity course. It is totally free. It is totally free. Oh, and at the end, there'll be the link to my slides so you can get all this info. If you just search accessibility on Udacity, it is the only one, and it's free and it's great. Way better than I did. Way better. Here's a bunch of accessibility posters. They're for the UK, but they're super handy. Here's the W3, of course, does a great job with definitions, and now with good examples. And they decided that their website looked ugly, so they made it better. So these are actually much more usable than they were just a few months ago. And so every time I'm trying to do something tricky, I look at their examples. Oh, and recently there was these personal stories I saw of people and their difficulty in using the web with their different impairments. So that really brought a personal touch to it. So there's that link there. And yeah, and then so you do all that and you're winning. That's what Catalog Laser, that's what it looks like. Is there any questions? Yeah. Mostly I'm thinking, the question was about what other difficulties are there using a screen reader in a single page app. Mostly I'm talking about semantic HTML, about people re-implementing the wheel, using divs instead of the proper elements. Because as I started switching out my divs for actual checkboxes and things, it got better and better. I had to do a little bit of customization, but generally it's that the one website I showed you that's perfectly accessible, didn't use any of this fancy CSS or JavaScript thing, didn't move things up and down or wherever on the page. It just sort of kept things simple. So as we get more cool functionality with the React apps, you just need to be testing with a screen reader because you're making things more complicated and you're breaking this use case you probably didn't think about. Any other questions? Yeah. Okay, the question was about when loading content, what does it look like when it's done. So I would wait, as soon as it finishes, I would put something in the ARIA Live section, which will read it to the screen reader, saying the content's done loading, and then I would focus on the first important thing, whatever that is, so that they have the top of the context of the stuff that's loaded. It will interrupt if it's set to assertive, which is usually what I have it set to. It interrupts whatever they're doing. And if new content has just finished loading, that's the right time to do that. Got time for one more question. Time for one more question? Yes.
Are there screen readers on mobile?
On mobile, there are. There's TalkBack on Android. There is VoiceOver on Safari. I've used both of those. I'm sure there's others, but those are the main two I know about.
Did they work in the browser, or they work with anything?
They work with anything. And when you're building a native app for phone or for desktop, you kind of use the elements that are already accessible. On web, we can do lots of crazy stuff, and so we're very good at screwing up screen readers. Difficult piece of software. So I can take other questions afterwards. So I'm Andy Ernst. You can contact me at aernst@axon.com, or you can talk to me if you must. And I made these slides available at axon.com/react-alley, A11Y, which has all of my links and everything good like that. Yeah, that's all for me.
All right, so we are going to do a quick little announcement of our raffle prize. We have a Fire HD8 tablet with Alexa, whatever that means. I don't know. But we do have a raffle winner, and then we have a backup, just in case anybody happened to pop out already. So if you could all humor me and do a quick little drum roll, let us build up some excitement for our raffle winner today. All right, and our raffle winner is Gio D'Amelio. I
know.
Thank you. All right, and then thank you all for coming. We appreciate you having made some time out of your day to show up for it. If I could just get all the Axon employees one more time who might have a couple minutes at the end of the event to raise your hand if you want to talk to anyone from Axon. And these people that are raising their hand would be happy to share a couple words with you, get a feel for kind of who you are, tell themselves a little bit more about you, and yeah. Thank you all for coming. Go ahead and have a couple more snacks, a couple more drinks, see some things are still out, and then I think we'll wrap up a little bit after 8. So feel free to socialize, and we've got this gentleman to close on out.
Yeah, not much more to say. We'll probably end up, if you want to continue the conversation, we'll probably end up at Tango, is I believe was the recommended place. It's just right over the highway, and it's pretty cool. So Yeah, I guess there's plenty of food to snack on still, and then we'll head out of here in just a little bit, right?
Yep.
All right. Thanks again for coming. If you have an idea for a talk you want to give, even if it's 5 minutes long, just reach out to me, and I'll set you up for the next event sometime, I think in August. So, all right, take care. Thanks.